You know those moments in your day that feel almost automatic? The coffee in your hand, the way you move through the day without thinking about it, the music playing in the background? What if those aren't just passing time? What if they're shaping how you think, feel, and remember? This is one of my Science You Can Use episodes, where we take a look at the research and talk through what it might mean in a real day. Evidence for your everyday. We experience 1,000 waking minutes on average every day. How are you spending yours? I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and you're listening to 1,000 Waking Minutes. I can't wait to connect with you here with practical ways to eat well, move daily, and be healthy, to optimize every waking minute you live for a happier, healthier life. Thank you for sharing some of your waking minutes with me today. Let's get started.
I'm saying yes to better days, yes. I'm on my way, yes. It's gonna be okay, yeah.
There's a moment most mornings that don't look like much, perhaps. The mug in your hand, maybe it's coffee, maybe it's tea, maybe it's still a little too hot, so you hold on to it for a second longer than you need to. You take a brief pause, a little sip, check it out. It's before the emails, before the day is really asking anything of you. Those moments are easy to overlook at times, and maybe some days or most days you do. But that moment can stretch across time when you have many of them, across days, weeks, and years. Maybe it's something across decades. And after time of doing that same gesture, that same routine and rhythm, you start to realize that they carry a different weight. And it's not just in the rhythm and the routine which shows up, but what they're doing for you, how your thinking holds together, how your energy shows up for you, even what you come back to easily at the end of a long day and what you don't. Those are the rhythms and routines of your day, and we're going to talk about some of those through research today. Hello, and welcome to 1,000 Waking Minutes. I'm Dr. Wendy Bazilian, and I'm really glad you're here today. This is one of my Science You Can Use episodes where I take a look at some emerging research that I think you might be interested in and translate it to something real. Evidence for your everyday. So I've been reading a few studies recently that caught my attention, and they were looking closely at things that we already do that live inside of our very normal habits that we have in our days. And they're the kinds of things that frequently don't get necessarily scheduled or planned to optimize. They're just happening. Maybe what drinks that you put on the table at night, or how you move when you're not in exercise mode specifically, when you're not trying to exercise, I should say. What fills the background maybe of your environment as you go about life. And as I thought about these, and I was looking at some of these papers I'll share with you, what became interesting wasn't just the findings. It was recognizing that this is already a pattern that maybe most of us can relate to, or that we can even proactively react toward, whether we've named them specifically or identified it directly yet. So over time, our days take on a shape. You'd probably agree. Maybe they change with the seasons a little bit, but it's not always just because you designed them that way, but because of what repeats. One thing that pops to mind is like brushing our teeth. That's on repeat for most of us 2 times a day at least. The food and drink that shows up again and again. The ways your body moves through your own environment and space around objects, how you step, the rhythms of your home, the sounds that you listen to or the inputs that surround you when you pay attention to them, or that you just become familiar living among. And that's where the idea of eat well, move daily, be healthy, those 3 pillars of my health mantra that I like to share with you, that's where those live. And it's not just something that we always add on. So sometimes I talk about small incremental changes, but today we're talking about things that kind of can just seep in or exist within our day as we drift in and out and in and out of our activities and our choices during the day. And when research is done well, it doesn't just hand us a new set of rules, as you'll see, but it gives us a little bit of a mechanistic understanding, a little bit of a clearer view, perhaps, of the patterns that we might do over time and the influence that they might have on our health. How something that feels small in the moment might actually have that additive, cumulative effect and register differently when you follow it far enough through time. So today I want to spend a little time with 3 pieces of research to do exactly that. And they all ladder up to something that I think we all are paying attention to these days, and that is cognition and our mind. One follows tea and coffee consumption across decades and what a pattern looks like when it comes to memory and cognitive change. Another study looks at fast and reactive kind of movement and what the years of doing that look like inside the brain, not just in terms of performance, but in terms of structure and connection and flexibility and resilience. And the third study stays with something maybe even most familiar to us, music. And in fact, just listening to music and being around it regularly, perhaps playing an instrument, but you'll see that's not required, and how that seems to carry forward into how we think and remember later on. So none of these are about doing something extreme or maybe even that different than what you're already doing. And that's part of what makes them interesting to me. And they're all very recent, you'll hear, because they exist, they live, I guess they do. They exist directly within our minutes that we're already experiencing in our lived experience. I love that. I love that phrase, lived experience. I've been hearing that more recently in sort of certain spaces, but I like to think of that phrase as well. But it means then they're part of our life's currency, which I like to talk about, which is our time. And you're already spending your time, whether you're thinking about it or not. So when you start to see that a little more clearly, it doesn't force you to change, but it does invite us to pay a little more attention. So let's walk through these studies together. And I want to get started with the first one. This is about coffee and tea. This study followed more than 131,000, close to 132,000 adults from the Nurses' Health Study and Health Professionals Follow-Up Study. And it was with up to 43 years of follow-up, with dietary data that was collected every few years and outcomes tracked, like I said, for more than 40 years. It was just published in JAMA, the Journal of the American Medical Association, in February of this year, 2026. And it was checking in on what they were drinking every few years and watching over time what happened to memory and cognitive health. So when you stop and step back and look at this kind of a timeline with this many people, it's less about like one choice one day and more about what someone does consistently over time. So what stood out to the researchers wasn't anything extreme. It wasn't an extreme intake, wasn't dramatic intake of this or that, but it was in the middle. People who regularly had a couple cups of coffee a day, 2 to 3, or tea in that same moderate range, about 1 to 2 cups of tea, is where the strongest associations were seen. They tended to show a slightly lower risk of developing dementia over time, about an 18% lower risk comparing higher versus lower intake. And it was significant, 18% lower risk. So this is not a guarantee, not a switch you can flip, but it is a consistent signal that showed up across people living their lives and consuming moderately coffee or tea on that kind of regular basis. And one detail that really helped sharpen what was observed by the researchers, the decaffeinated varieties didn't show the same pattern. So this isn't just about something really great like a rhythm or routine that we know have other reasons to enhance our health. It's not just the pattern and the ritual. It points more toward what is actually in the cup. Caffeine, yes, for one, but also many of those plant compounds that come in coffee and also in tea, Camellia sinensis, specifically tea, the tea leaves. And the synergy of those, caffeine and those plant compounds, sort of working together in the cup, in the routine, in the day. So a way to think about this, and I was trying to do that, bring analogy into everything, is less like a boost, a supplement, something you could do, but more like a, forgive the pun, slow drip, if you get my drift on that, like a slow drip over time. It's about the consistency. It's nothing that changes anything in a single moment or a single day, but something that your brain is exposed to again and again in a way that may support how it holds up over time, aging well. And when you bring it back into our real day, it's pretty ordinary if you think about it. That morning rhythm, that morning routine. I know it's cherished by so many people. I don't mean to suggest that. And if you have your ritual and your bean and your roast and your favorites, by all means, I am on board and celebrate. And please invite me over for a cup. Tea, the same. But it is about the rhythm and routine on a regular, moderate basis. It's the person driving to work with the travel mug and not thinking twice about it. You just walk out and you have it. Maybe think about it when you forget it, actually. It's someone who always takes tea time in the afternoon, or maybe goes and does like a reset, like between certain kind of meetings or to mark time during their day. Maybe it's a cafe routine that you love to meet a friend at or you stop at because it's part of your route and part of your daily rhythm. None of them really feels like a major health decision at that moment, but over days and months, it becomes one. So it is a health decision, and those sips really add up. So again, it's not about adding something brand new or turning coffee into like a strategy, because I do talk about hydration and I will talk about caffeine, I will talk about coffee again, but really recognizing that if it's something that's already part of your day, the way you do it matters a little more than you might have thought. Somewhere in that moderate, consistent range seems to be where it signals, according to this research, not gulping it down, not shooting for more, not saying you have too much, but just letting it be a steady part of your rhythm. And if coffee isn't your thing, tea seems to be showing up similarly. And it opens a lot of room for variety and taste. So that's the thread here. Eating well doesn't always have to be big, dramatic and intentional shifts. It might be something you're already doing. So thinking about it, if it's part of your day, tea or coffee, stay in that moderate range, roughly 2 to 3 cups of coffee per day or 1 to 2 cups, according to the research. So you take the research and you put it into your life without feeling like you need to push it. Think about consistency over intensity. So if it's a regular daily pattern, keep it basically regular daily, not like occasional spikes and extremes. Pay attention to what you're actually drinking, when you're drinking it, and the timing. Decaf in this particular study didn't show up the same way for its relationship to dementia risk. But if you don't consume it, and you don't want a meaningful alternative from this particular study, there is some flexibility. And again, it's not the only thing. That's why there's a lot of research out there supporting our brain, our body, and our mind. And certainly let it fit into your natural rhythm. Where it fits in your day is the best time. So that's the first study. The second study, the first one is taking in something. The second one is shifting to how you move. So move daily. Remember, eat well, move daily. I don't always land them here, but it seemed to be a nice fit this time. So this one shifts into how we move but not in the usual way that we talk about movement. And I think you're going to find this study quite fun to learn about. This isn't about steps. It's not about time. It's not about cardio. This is about a ball. This is about a ball that moves so fast that your brain has to decide even before you're aware that you have to decide. And this study is about table tennis, they called it, because that's what we call it around the globe. But most of us call it ping pong, which honestly is kind of perfect because it sounds like exactly what is happening. Maybe to your brain at times too, if you're new to the game. Ping pong, back and forth, back and forth. So this study came out of Zhejiang, forgive my pronunciation, Zhejiang University out of China, and it was published in Brain Research a couple years ago, but it's gotten some renewed attention, so I wanted to bring it to you today. It was a smaller study with 41 participants overall, split into two groups. But one of the groups, and this is fascinating, especially because we're sort of starting to think about summer games, Olympics again, and that is one place where some of us get very highly exposed and excited about the table tennis tournament in the Olympics, Olympic level. But this one, 20 individuals that had very high level table tennis skills. So they were part of the national table tennis team or players, and they had trained for years. So these were experienced table tennis players. I love saying that, TTP, table tennis players. And they compared them to a similar group in other demographics, but not table tennis, of college students who didn't have that kind of training. And what they did were brain scans. So this was where they used what was called, it was a type of MRI called a 7 Tesla MRI, which is a very high resolution way of looking not just at brain structure, but also at how different parts of the brain are actually communicating. So you might be wondering, are they good at ping pong? That's not what they set out to test. But yes, the trained and experienced table tennis players were very good at ping pong. But you might also be asking, well, what does this have in terms of impact? The years of training, the years of playing, what does this kind of movement look like inside the brain? And the findings were really interesting, amazing, I'd even say. The players showed stronger integrity in their white matter. And that's the wiring that connects different parts of the brain inside had higher integrity, thinking like the network of roads and the nerves that fire and the axon width and strength and that carry information. In those players, the roads looked more intact and more efficient. And when you looked at how different brain regions were talking to each other in real time, what they called functional connectivity, instead of one fixed pattern, the player's brain showed more flexibility, which I imagine you would need, but it showed up in the science. More dynamic shifting, more communication between regions, especially in those areas tied to attention, visual tracking, and decision making. Think of that, what you're doing with ping pong. It's like decision making while you're trying to visually track. There's a lot going on. So in other words, it wasn't just stronger wiring, it was a more responsive system overall. And even within that group, the players who performed better on the attention tests that they gave tended to have stronger signals in similar pathways, which sort of makes sense again when you're thinking of what that game actually asks of you. Even if you're a spectator, think of what that game asks of you. You're watching the ball, you're reading the spin, you're adjusting your body, you're predicting where it's going next, and you're predicting where you're going to land it so that you get the point. All of that happens in milliseconds. It's not autopilot. It's like you're actually in it. The game hasn't been played or that point hasn't been played until you're actually in it. They are. Here I am putting myself in their camp. Shame on me. They're actually in it. But imagine it, even when you're playing the game, that's what you're doing as well. So if you've ever watched table tennis at the Olympic level, it's almost hard to follow. Your eyes are trying to keep up. Your brain is working just to track what is happening. I end up sort of having a mouth open, jaw drop, and end up sort of giggling because I feel like I'm working so hard and I'm just standing there and I'm watching this incredible sport right before my eyes. So imagine being the one playing. And I think that that's probably where the giggles get me. Like, who do I think I am sitting here watching this and getting sweaty watching them? But over time, that kind of input, that demand for speed and precision and constant adjustment seems to shape the brain. So and it's not one single occasion. You can't go out and play ping pong one time. It's from the repetition, clearly. And neurologists have used all kinds of language, not in this study, but I've said before, like they talk about nerves that fire together, wire together, how like the constant repeat, some of which you can train. And here's a good example, can widen or direct more quickly or keep synapses flowing more flexibly. But what's so cool is this research connects brain science, performance, and real world applications all together. And this isn't the first time we've seen something like this. There's actually a growing body of research around what are called open skill activities or sports or movements where the environment is constantly changing and you have to respond in real time. And they tend to engage the brain differently than sort of steady and predictable movement. So the reality, though, is that most of us are not elite table tennis players. But the idea here is, what can we take from it? I mean, it's not to become one, unless you want to, and unless perhaps you can. Maybe you'll engage now, maybe you've been practicing. But some movement asks more of your attention, and it pulls you in, and it keeps your brain engaged. It reminds me of a little story that I remember. Jason had a friend who hosted neighborhood ping pong tournaments each year. I can't remember. They had there's sort of like the world championships, they called, of their neighborhood. And a number of people would like wheel out their ping pong tables from wherever they kept them. In California, very typically, they'll be in the garages or in a main game room if someone has a home large enough. But they would roll out their tables into the cul-de-sac, line them up, and suddenly they've got like kids and adults playing, but they were serious about this, jumping in. Some people were laughing and joking, but this was really no joke, but in the name of fun. And I can't remember if it was single elimination, but it was serious. There were signups, you move on to the next table, you're playing. But the point is, people were getting together around ping pong. So this is the sport we're discussing now. And even though you may not be actively engaged in ping pong, there are places and ways that you can engage in this or other things like it. So it is movement. It's also reaction, connection, and unpredictability. So it's performance with real world context. And those are health promoting behaviors. And think of the side notes of sharing time together in the company of others, being neighborly, engaging in socializing and movement. All of that is cool. But the point is that it's really layered. And this study was about table tennis and the brain matter. Globally, this is not, a niche activity that's, while it's true that in places like China, it's woven into everyday life, we would see it when we visited, and I've been told, and you've probably read and seen, that table tennis is something that's a very common sport in schools and community spaces. But if you think about Move Daily here, there are lots of places where you can find it. If you have access to a table, even occasionally, like a community center, our YMCA has them, a friend's house, step in, maybe play a few rounds. Don't walk by it. Don't use it to put, your dishes or your drink on. Maybe not as a workout, but as a game that pulls your attention in, and treat it like a game for fun, but know that there's something even more happening there. And if you don't have a ping pong table, think about other activities that may carry that same back and forth or quick response time. Pickleball. I haven't gotten into that yet. It looks really fun. It sounds really fun. People are really into it. Tennis, even something as simple as tossing a ball with someone where you have to react and adjust as you go. And just keep it a little messy, like do things that you have to react to. So it's not always fluid. Move yourself out of the way so that there's a little unpredictability, not knowing what's coming next. And that can help the brain engage. And then try to notice how it feels different than the steady movement and how quickly you're pulled into that moment. You're like probably hyper fixated, you're supercharged. You can't possibly be thinking about other things because the second you do, you lose your focus, you'll lose the point. So you recognize, you start seeing what's happening there. And then notice the things that happen with you. Your speed may improve, your anticipation of the moment, your constant recalibration around the ball, around where your partner across the table is. It gives you a sense that your brain is working and responding in healthy ways. So it's a different kind of movement, and it fits into a pattern, the minutes you're already living, and maybe you just experience them a little differently, knowing about this study. So now let's shift into our third and final study for today, because the next one doesn't ask us to move at all. It just asks us to listen. And that has to do with music. A song in the car that may come on. Do you get in the car and you turn it on and it's on whatever channel last was playing? Something playing while you cook. A piece of music that comes on, and before you've even thought about it, you're somewhere else in your mind in that moment, maybe back in college or at a school dance or some event in your first apartment maybe, or on a road trip, a kitchen counter, standing, talking to someone that you may not be with right now and that you miss. And that's what makes this study very cool and very interesting. This study was published just last year in the International Journal of Geriatric Psychiatry, and it followed nearly 11,000 adults in Australia, all who were age 70 or above. They were all cognitively healthy when the study began, and the researchers looked at something so wonderfully ordinary, whether people regularly listen to music. I mean, think about that as a study design. But they looked a little bit further, whether they regularly listened to music, whether they played an instrument, or did both. And then they followed them over time to see what happened to cognitive decline and dementia risk. And the findings were pretty striking. The people who consistently listened to music had a 39% lower risk of developing dementia than those who rarely listened. They also had a lower risk of cognitive impairment that's not dementia and tended to do better over time in memory and overall cognitive function. Playing an instrument was linked with lower dementia risk too, and people who both listened and played an instrument showed a similar pattern, but not more. In fact, just listening to music showed the highest statistically significant risk reduction at 39%. So this is a pretty remarkable signal for something that's so woven into most of our everyday lives. And of course, it doesn't mean that music is a magic shield or a prescription, certainly. Well, maybe it could become a type of prescription. I don't find any inherent problem with prescribing music to listen to. I can't make a promise of its impact, but this study gives another reason to listen. But it does mean that when researchers followed a very large group of older adults through time, regular music engagement stood out as one of the habits associated with better cognitive outcomes, which, I don't know, sort of makes sense, even though I wouldn't have thought to study that myself, so I'm so glad that others did. But think about music. It's not just the background, as some people put, like the background or the muzak. It's sort of like company at times. It holds a rhythm, it has words, it has memory, emotion, language, attention. It can settle us down. It can wake us up and energize us. It can focus you. It can soften the edges. And it can crack you right open like it does for me. I get very sentimental. In fact, I get sentimental thinking about the music that makes me sentimental when you didn't even realize it and you're just sitting there. It asks your brain to do quite a lot, and often all at once. And it's sort of in the background, which is so cool. So I've talked about music before and the music of our lives, how certain songs don't just mark time, but they carry time. They like really connect the dots on our memories. They become like little vaults for us. You hear just a few notes and an entire season of your life comes rushing back with all the color and vibrancy of it. You can hear voices, you can smell smells. And that's one of the reasons that I really love this study and wanted to share it. It makes something many of us already feel to be true and gives it scientific weight without also making it so heavy or big or like how much. And the first study we talked about was in the eat well pillar, so the tea and the coffee. And the second was in move daily, the ping pong and our brain. So I guess this would fit in the be healthy. Those are some of the things. Health is not only about how we eat and move, even though those are important components and we tend to focus on those a lot. But it is importantly what surrounds you, what nourishes your inner life, and what helps shape the atmosphere, the environment of your days. And music clearly belongs there, probably a lot of other places as well. So in real life, this might be as simple as being maybe a little more intentional about letting music be your backup, song in places where you live, in the kitchen, on a walk, although I'm all for just listening to the sounds of nature. But if you're out on a certain type of walk, if music, or during exercise, during after dinner reset, or when you're washing dishes, even in the car, instead of more news or listening to voices, bringing in the music, even though I want you to listen to this podcast, bring in music in the surrounding moments. It's part of the reason why I love my theme song so much, because it pulls me right in to I'm saying yes for better days. Yes, I'm on my way. Yes, for the 1,000 waking minutes. If you play or played an instrument, you might pull it out. Even if you haven't touched it in a while, you may be rusty, but it will make you happy, I bet, or make you grimace at how easy it used to be and how hard it is now. I recently did that with my oboe. I have some new reeds, but boy, getting back in shape for that is something. It may be making a new short playlist or pulling up an old soundtrack. I've been playing soundtracks that I used to listen to because I love what comes next. I know the whole album. So sometimes it's fun just to play the songs of an artist or play the songs of a genre. But I love playing the entire soundtrack beginning to end, because I'd live within those moments that create the song and then knowing the song that comes next. I do that with Broadway musicals a lot. My daughter does with me as well. So you can have different playlists, and a lot of people are very good at this. Ones that actually help mental focus or comfort you or energize, or are a middle ground maybe that provide a certain thematic. I think it's really a good idea to think about music as being part of the architecture of your day. Where does music fit in? It's sort of like the feng shui. Where does music fit in? Where the lighting or scents, or where furniture lives and sits, because it can change the feel of a space. If you've ever walked in to a lobby of a hotel, or walked into an office setting, or walk into a person's home with certain music on, it really just immediately is something that sets a tone. And maybe it has more impact than you think over time. So listening to the music that's meaningful to you, familiar music can carry memory and emotion, of course, but also how you explore new music, or maybe just let music be a part of your day. If you play, maybe keep a little space for it in your life. If you tinkle along on the piano, or if you're a concert pianist, either way, it can be a little bit of fun and also a little bit of a mental workout, but one that feels amplifying and enriching, not diminishing. More pleasure than homework if you were a person who took piano and had to practice for your lessons. And notice maybe what kind of music does what for you. So, maybe you haven't tapped into that, what invigorates you or what comforts you when you need it. And maybe take a few notes so that you can capture and engage in this way. So when you lay all these three studies today side by side, I just think that something really fun and familiar shows up. And when you hear that last one on music, it has a way of pulling everything back together without too much effort, I think. We started on coffee and tea. For many, it's the morning ritual that sort of kicks off the day, following people across decades and seeing something so moderate, so familiar, showing up and what it might mean for memory over time. Then we stepped into that fast back and forth motion and the MRIs for the brain and what that kind of movement and training over time can actually look like inside the brain, how we're wired, how it responds, and how it can quickly adjust in real time. And that really was cool, bringing the brain science to performance to real life. And then music. And if you think about those three, they don't really feel that separate. They start to feel like the kind of science you can use, the kind of evidence that can show up in your everyday. It's taking advantage of knowing that those things and taking advantage of maybe the 10-minute game that you may have passed on because yes, it may be good for the brain, but yes, it's so fun. And it's laughter and friendly competition or playing or singing along to the song or getting into another pattern of saying Alexa, which I won't say right now because in the next room I have one that would bring up the music as soon as I called it. We often call some of our behaviors that we enjoy doing, like games and hobbies, pastimes. And honestly, when you think about it, and I talked to some friends recently about this, pastime, it's amazing, that word, our hobbies, the things that we reach for because we enjoy them, knitting and reading and putting on music while we cook, stepping out to play a quick game, our pastimes, sitting for a cup of coffee. What are we doing? We're passing time. That's not a judgment, that's a celebration. We tend to set them off to the side as the hobbies that pass time. But they're important parts of our day and they're important parts of our health. The word itself is right there in front of us. Time, passing. And it's not lost time when it passes. I think I need to do an episode more about this. I've been thinking a lot about this lately, so it's percolating up. I'm not sure what I'm going to say about it, but maybe I'm saying some of that now. But it's not lost time. Pastimes are filled with whatever we choose or fall into again and again. So it's not really that abstract when we think about it, but it's really cool when there's evidence that shows up to show us. And that's what sort of stays with me today. Not the rules, not the prescription, unless you want a prescription to drink your coffee and enjoy it, to listen to music and enjoy it, and maybe pick up a racket and hopefully enjoy it. But really about the shifts and the consistent routines for your day. Those small, familiar activities have an impact on your brain in fascinating ways. Not only that, but they shape how you feel, how you think, and how you show up. Maybe not all at once, but little by little. So this is about where we eat well, move daily, and be healthy, and make our choices with our waking minutes each day. And I'll just say this. When I was reading these studies, I found myself smiling at them. Sometimes I get intense and my brow furrows. I'm curious. But what got me smiling is that they're not dramatic. But, I don't know the world of science, but it was wonderfully curious to me that scientists wanted to study this and that they accomplished it and they had something to say. And they reviewed it and wrote it, and the peer review process let them publish it so that we could enjoy it. So sometimes when you see something and you think, I already have that in my life. That's pretty cool. And I wanted to share those with you today. And you might share the same. You might be doing some of these. So maybe in your car later, instead of letting whatever come on to play or saying, Alexa, play, Time After Time, or One Moment in Time, or Seasons of Love. Those come to mind. About Time, 525,600 minutes, one of my favorite all-time songs. But something that instantly takes you somewhere. And just let it play all the way through. And there she is. Alexa, please off. Or tomorrow morning when you reach for your usual cup of joe. Nothing wrong with that, but remember that, enjoy it. Remember other instances, or maybe you're going to try that new hojicha tea latte that has become all the rage. Of course, hojicha is not a new tea. That's been around forever, and it's delicious. It's a warm, sort of roasty, toasty tea with the popped rice in it, sort of like mini popcorn. Jason and I've had that in our pantry for a long, long time. But now all the rage is apparently these hojicha lattes with foam on top. But as you're thinking of those are the minutes and the moments that actually are both enjoyable, but also impact your health. So as you do that, these are good for your moments. These are, this is good for my body. This is time well spent. So here we are at the end of the episode, and truly thank you for spending some of your waking minutes with me today. I hope some of this conversation, and I hope you'll take it to become a conversation and imagine you talking with me during this, but I hope it connected with you or piqued your interest in a way that you might carry it into your own time in your own day. The studies we talked about, I will put in the show notes if you'd like to explore them a little further. And I wanted to say thank you for being part of this community. If this episode felt meaningful to you, well, I'd love you to talk about it at the dinner table tonight. But I'd love you to also share it with someone, leave a comment, or just come on Instagram at 1000WakingMinutes or find me at wendybazilian.com. I'm Wendy Bazilian, of course, your host of 1000 Waking Minutes. And until next time, be well. Thank you for tuning in to 1000 Waking Minutes. A huge thank you to our amazing collaborators, including our production and marketing teams, and Gabriela Escalante in particular. To the ultra-talented Beza for my theme music, my lifelong friend and artist, Pearl Price Photography and Design, to Danielle Ballantyne, Jen Nguyen, Joanna Powell, and of course my family, and everyone working tirelessly behind the scenes. And to you, our valued listeners, I so appreciate your support. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider leaving a comment, writing a review, and giving 1000 Waking Minutes, that's us, a 5-star rating. And please hit subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you enjoy your podcasts. Please follow and stay connected at wendybazilian.com. And don't forget to share with your friends. Your support helps us grow and bring you more great content. Until next time, find some simple opportunities to optimize those 1000 waking minutes each day.
I'm saying yes